Hello and welcome to Unapologetic, the UK's podcasts on politics, news and stuff with a right of centre viewpoint. Tonight I'm going to be speaking to you on the podcast. I have alongside me Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hiya.
And Susan. Say hi, Susan.
Hello.
Okay guys, so what we're going to be focusing on tonight is the Prime Minister's speech at the Conservative Party conference today. It was a pretty big news item. And I thought watching it that it seemed quite different to past year's Conservative Party conference. I mean, I've been to a few myself. Seemed a bit of a smaller, lower key stage rather than sort of a big stage that they usually have. And rather than a big grand entrance, I thought Boris kind of made it a bit more of a sort of a subtle entrance, shaking a few hands, having a chat with Cat, well, as subtle as you can be, walking in as the Prime Minister to a big conference of 1,000 people. But I think the point he was trying to make was that he's kind of a relaxed, down-to-earth guy. And do you guys think that he's like that? I mean, Susan, what do you think of Boris? Down-to-earth guy?
I don't know if he's down to earth, but he definitely looked chilled, relaxed and comfortable when he walked in.
Yeah, and Steve?
Well, it was a massive improvement from Theresa May dancing in or whatever she did that set the world laughing at her. So that was a Prime Minister, I think, can have a bit of fun, but I think certainly the entrance should be at least a little bit conservative.
Yeah, I mean, at least he didn't have a coughing fit as well, because obviously Theresa May last year had the,
Oh, that wasn't her fault. Anyone can have a cough, can't they?
Yeah, but it was like the whole speech.
Well, when you've got a cough, it don't just heal during the middle of a speech. There's no magic medicine that's going to cure it.
No, that is true. So, Boris started off by speaking about the strong union of the United Kingdom, and he did keep referencing that a number of times. I think his purpose probably was to give some reassurance, really, to the people of Scotland and Ireland. He then made a bit of a joke, actually. It was quite a few jokes in the speech. I don't know if you guys saw it, but he did try and kind of make his kind of cheeky, chappy jokes a number of times. And he said that Parliament was useless. He made jokes about John Bercow eating a kangaroo's testicle and making reference to I'm a Celebrity. What he was actually saying was that if Parliament were in a reality show, or they were a reality show, they would have all been voted out by now. And it's ridiculous that voters do have more say over a reality TV show than actually democracy in the House of Commons. I mean, what do you think about that, Steve?
Well, it's a good line, isn't it? He's always funny. I mean, I've been watching Boris do speeches for years now. And even when he was like kind of nobody, just a backbencher, when his speech was on, the auditorium was always full. You know, some of the lead ministers might only get a handful of people, but he would always pack them out because he's great at delivering speeches and he is funny and I like his style. So I think he did well with that today.
What do you think, Susan?
I agree, actually. He's very entertaining when he talks. And it's quite a clever tactic, really, bringing into the kind of things that the current society and people seem to like talking about is the reality TV show. So it's quite a good link, actually.
Speak for yourself.
So one thing he did, obviously, he's going to criticise Corbyn. He's going to criticise the opposition, of course. And he criticised the Marxist ideas such as the 4-day week. And he called him out again on his election. He said Corbyn's constitutional duty is to remove Boris. And in this stage of litigation, he is surprised that no one has sued him for breach of contract. Now, I feel that was a bit of a reference to what's going on in the US, where politics seems to be being played out in the courts. I mean, what do you think about that, Susan?
Well, I think it started to here, really, hasn't it, when, we went to the Supreme Courts to ask about Brexit. So actually, I think we're in a dangerous territory if we allow it to carry on.
Yeah, and I think he obviously was making a joke point about the breach of contract, but also he was being a bit serious as well, wasn't he? What do you think, Steve?
Well, I don't think he was referencing American politics, although you're quite right, that is happening there, but it's also happening here. You know, the fact is that more and more often people run to the courts if they don't like what the government is doing. And I don't like the fact that we might be following America down that road. I think it's dangerous because it forgets, who's elected and who isn't and whose jobs are what.
Yeah, that's true. That is a fair point. I suppose it is very much like the UK now. So I think what Boris then moved on to say was that everyone wants Brexit done so we can get on with the domestic agenda. He was very keen that we are actually Europeans and that we do need a new relationship, and he's going to be tabling some new proposals. So he did set out a number of red lines in the speech, but I didn't sort of note those down because things have kind of developed since then. So he was hinting and intimating at a new deal, a new Brexit deal, and that has this evening been released. So I don't know if you guys have seen it, but very basic nutshell of it is that Northern Ireland will stay in a single market on its own temporarily, and then as a parliament in Stormont every 4 years they'll get to vote as to whether they're happy to stay, and we would immediately as Britain have England have say over our own train policy right from the beginning. Now Steve Baker and the ERG kind of seem in support of it, so the DUP are in support of it because they feel it kind of gives them a say more over sort of the Irish border. To wonder what you guys think. What do you think of it, Steve?
Well, it depends on the rest of the text of an agreement, doesn't it? Because it's not just about the backstop and Northern Ireland. I mean, obviously that's important. It's important to protect our union and to protect the Good Friday Agreement, but it's not just about that. So I'd really want to see the full text, and I admit I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment on whether I'm in support of it. But it's a good sign if the ERG group like it, because you know they're the ones who are the strongest to make sure that Brexit is a proper Brexit.
What do you think, Susan?
Well, a bit like Steve, I'm going to reserve judgment until I've seen it in its entirety. However, I do quite like the fact that he's going after a deal and a deal that he wants to put in. So he's been quite clear that we're coming out no matter what, which I think most of the country agree with. But everyone's kind of been trying to sell him down the line, saying he doesn't want a deal, he's trying to rip us away. And actually, he's come out and saying, actually, I'm happy to have a deal, but I want it on our term, what's good for this country, and I'm not bowing down. I quite like that.
But let's be honest, probably Parliament aren't going to sign up for his deal anyway.
Yeah.
Probably the EU will throw some sort of spanner in the works anyway. So this deal, I think, is just to get us to that end point, really. And I've got to be honest, it annoys me when people say, you know, we don't want no deal. The last thing we want is no deal. Every Brexiteer that I know is quite relaxed with no deal. It's not that we want a perpetual state of chaos after Brexit, it's that we firmly believe that people will see sense and quickly do all the deals that are needed to be done, and a lot of them have already been done, of course, but that the important things that are left remaining will get sorted quickly, because it's in no one's interest. For, you know, we are the Europe's biggest customer, and they're an important customer to us as well. It's in no one's interest, and the businesses won't let politicians kind of preen on the stage and put up unnecessary roadblocks. The businesses will just say, "Are you crazy?" And it's all a complete scare story that no deal will be a disaster. It'll be a little bit of a hiccup, and then everything will settle down, in my opinion.
Well, either way, the uncertainty has caused more damage, I think, than any Brexit could ever have anyway. But having businesses in limbo and not knowing what they're going to do from one month to the next, or what they're going to happen next year, I think that's caused a lot more damage. But I just think it's quite interesting that everyone's kind of been sitting there saying that he's going to ruin the country, and actually he's come forward and said, I'm happy to do what I need to do, and whichever way that looks like, I'm willing to do it. I quite like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was very clear about getting Brexit done. And then obviously, like I say, he did go on to speak about his domestic agenda. So he spoke about his principles and what defines him as a person. And he used his mother as an example. I mean, he made another little Brexit joke there because obviously his father and brother are quite famous Remainers. And he was saying his mother was a Leave. So at least there's some kind of family Leavers there.
Well, he said she was the matriarch, didn't
Yeah.
he? So she's the important one. She's the one who kind of rules the family, and she voted Leave.
Exactly, yeah. So it was quite funny. And obviously his dad was watching in the audience. So that was quite a sweet moment. But the reason he made the reference, because he said his mother taught him to believe in equal importance, equal dignity and equal worth of every human on the planet. And this is where I think he's played a blinder, really, because he was stating that the NHS upholds that principle. He said it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, the whole country gathers around at your bedside if you are sick. Everyone pays to ensure you have the best doctors and nurses, and we are beating back diseases such as breast cancer, which we are apparently leading in Europe on that. So he announced a bold plan to build 40 new hospitals, stating that professionals need professional buildings to work in, and this would be the biggest hospital build programme of all time. I thought it was quite interesting because he then went on to add that for 44 years of the 70 years that the NHS has been in existence, the Conservatives have been in government. And he asked everyone to, his words were, hear this loud and clear, the Conservatives are the party of the NHS. And I thought that was a very sort of claiming, almost like a turf war and claiming turf over Labour. What do you think, Susan?
Well, normally the opposition tend to throw NHS into every mix, don't they? Now, my family's a big... Sorry, Steve's pointing at me to speak louder, so I do apologise. So my family's a big user of the NHS, and I cannot fault it over the last few years. I know everyone's sitting there saying that it's on its knees and everything else, but actually what it is about priority. So if people used it better, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in. But any investment into our NHS, I'm going to be all behind. Simple as that, really.
Yeah, what do you think, Steve?
Well, going back to the descriptor he used for the NHS, when I heard that, I thought that was one of the most poignant descriptions of the NHS I've ever heard. That when you get sick, the whole country gathers around your bedside. Now, what a clever and actually true, I think, in a way to describe what the NHS is. And you know, capitalists and people who believe in free markets sometimes look askance at things that are socialised. But things that are socialised are not socialism. Socialism is when the whole system is socialised. things that are socialised, having some level of insurance is perfectly reasonable in a free market. And some countries it doesn't suit, and some places it doesn't work well because of their culture. But in the UK, people believe in the NHS, and I thought that was very nice, actually, a really nice way to put it, that almost anybody, I think, could get behind who lives in our country.
Yeah, and I think what I most liked about it is what you said after that, because what you've just said there is true. Actually, you don't. Everyone assumes that says, "Oh, you have the NHS means you can't have that if you're, a conservative." Well, no, because the point he was making, he said that one nation conservatism will end the social care crisis and will help with the NHS because it will be paid for by increasing productivity. And he stated this wouldn't be done by ideas akin to hopefully I say this right. There's a quote here: Bolivarian revolutionary Venezuela, but by free market capitalism. So he was saying that we don't shun capitalism as a party, we embrace it, and that's how we pay for our services. And it's a welcome change to hear a Conservative MP to say capitalism at conference. And you shouldn't think that it's a surprise, because, it's what the Conservatives are about. What are you laughing for?
I'm not sure you said that right.
It's Bolivarian revolutionary Venezuela.
Oh, maybe you did. But anyway, let me tell you what I thought about that one. That one nation phrase. I hate that phrase, because all conservatism is one nation. All conservatism is about helping everyone. You don't help people by trapping them forever in poverty, which is what the left try and do. To try and set up a system where people will never escape, and you're just always giving them handouts, and so always guaranteed you think their vote. Actually, I think people are a bit cleverer than that, and they don't think, oh, just because I'm being given a couple of bucks, that means that I'm going to vote for this person. I think they see through it. But I don't like one nation conservatism is different. That is this idea that you're like a father to everybody, that you can boss everyone around, and that you continually interfere in their lives to help them do better. I don't like that. The libertarian in me doesn't like that. So every time the phrase one nation pops up, it rankles. But I don't think Boris was using it that way. At least I hope he wasn't.
Well, I think he wasn't, in the sense that he was saying that capitalism and free market capitalism will increase productivity, which we will use to pay for the services.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that they're not just going to take. They've got a kind of a plan of action about how to pay for things, rather than just taking it off of people all the time. It's about everyone growing as a nation and as a society, rather than just going, you will pay and you won't.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was listening to this on the radio earlier, and when he got to the NHS bit, I actually literally choked up. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but I just thought it just really inspired me, actually.
Cheese alert.
It is a bit of a cheese alert, but actually, it's actually quite sad that it's the first time that a Conservative Prime Minister has mentioned capitalism at a conference. That's crazy. They should be saying it all the time. It's what they're about. Why are we ashamed of that? And I think that's kind of the point he was making. Why are we scared of being capitalists?
I'm not sure it's exactly the first time, but I think he hasn't been. What he's saying is it hasn't been said for a while. But just to put a little bit of a wrinkle in this, because before we get to Boris Lovey, because I like Boris a lot. I think he's going to be a great Prime Minister going forwards. I think he's making some really good decisions. But I thought that bit of the speech did sound a bit like Blair. I mean, just thinking back, Blair used to, from the other side of politics, if you like, from the left, he used to say, we're happy with everyone being rich and we're going to use the proceeds of a building economy to increase, the things that the government does to help people. That was Blair's line. And now Boris is using it from a different angle, but it's the same line. And what it forgets is that every penny you take from the taxpayer is a penny they don't get to choose to spend themselves. So you must think wisely before you do it, rather than just presuming you know better, you know how to spend the money better. Now, I'm not sure Boris is going to do that, but I didn't like the tone in that respect. It was a bit too Blairite for me.
I think I'm going to be blinded, because anything that's good for the NHS, any money that's going to be pumped into it, I'm always going to back. Always am. I love the NHS. I love what it stands for. I love that anyone in their darkest, deepest moment will be helped.
So what if Labour double his pledge? Will you then switch your vote to Labour?
No, because I don't believe they would. I don't believe that they actually would. And I strongly, like I said, we used, in my family, we have to use the NHS quite a lot, and I've seen it work at its absolute best. Genuinely felt about, selling the house and moving abroad if I needed to get the best care for my child. And actually this country was the best care. And I pay a decent amount of tax. But I'm more than happy to pay that for anyone else's child, anyone else's relative that needs that care at that time.
I think he has bought into a bit of a vote winner there. Everyone loves the NHS.
Yeah.
Well, we've certainly built the NHS up almost like a religion in this country, and I'm certainly not the first person to say so. But I think that's a little dangerous. Don't get me wrong, I like the NHS. My father is in the NHS right at this moment having an operation. And all of us have benefited from it at some point. But it's not like there is only one model. We shouldn't be afraid to challenge when things go wrong in the NHS, which occasionally they do, although I often think it's more about government interference causing things that go wrong. But we shouldn't be so blind, because if you go and get looked after by someone and they make you better, or they make your mum better, or they make your sister better, of course you feel a bond to them, you thank them, you're grateful for what they've done. But you must remember that there are some people who aren't getting as good a service, and sometimes there are hiccups. So we mustn't be blinded to the possible improvements that can be made.
No, I agree with that. And it'd be quite an interesting one to have a different podcast on that alone. I put in many complaints.
So going on to Boris as well, obviously he referenced when he was Mayor of London, saying he had London has so much success in the world stage, and saying the opportunity is not nationwide. He's really keen to see investment in a number of road projects that he named. I haven't listed them all down, but he named a number of schemes that I'm sure resonated with local people in those areas. He talked about increased bus services, and also we're going to be launching a space programme in 2 counties. He joked that he would send the communist cosmonaut Corbyn on his first space mission. He actually used about 3 more words beginning with a C, but I couldn't really do 6 C's on the trot because that had been a lot of alliteration that I wasn't able to do. But I thought cosmonaut was a word I don't think I've ever heard.
Have you not?
No.
I've not heard it in a speech like that.
No, I've not heard it in a speech.
That's what the Russians call astronauts, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard it in a lot of
Cosmonauts,
movies, but never from a Prime Minister's mouth.
Well, I've got to say that as much as I get the joke and think it's quite funny, if he's going to send someone into space for free, I'd rather it be me than Corbyn, because I'd like to go.
So another thing he was saying about was increased use of stop and search to combat knife crime. He was saying we should have tougher sentencing by ensuring that whole sentences are served. But also as One Nation, as he obviously referenced that One Nation again, saying that the prison system should rehabilitate, and he'd also like to strongly invest in youth clubs to prevent young people going down the wrong path. Susan, what do you think about that?
Talk about backtrack, because we had youth clubs and we had an awful lot of infrastructure, and what we tended to do, not to get too much into those things, but what we did is we upped every layer of support. We made it higher, and we made everything that was accessible harder to access, and the criteria then became harder. So what we did is we got rid of the bottom layer of support and then made everything go up. So it really frustrates me that he's saying this is a great idea. Of course it's a great idea. It is proven to have worked, and it is proven to have supported children. It does not combat knife crime, and it will not combat youth crime, same as it will not combat other things. But it certainly helps, and it sends a message to our young people that they are valued and cared about. And Steve's looking at me like he's so disagreeing with me. But I swear to God, I'll throw something at you if you do.
Do you know, it's not precisely that I disagree, but when I was a kid in the 80s, and there were youth clubs all over the place, and they were absolutely horrific. And anybody who didn't want to get beaten up or wasn't able to fight wouldn't go, because frankly, there wasn't never enough supervision. They were always the real wayward kids tended to gather there, and if you went along and you weren't one of them, you was going to get smacked around. I mean, that was my experience. Now, probably wasn't the same all over the country. There were some very nice leafy villages where I expect that didn't happen. But I didn't grow up in one of those.
But you're missing the point. So the wayward kids that will go in there, they're the ones that we need at these clubs. You coming along with your lunchbox, wanting a little midnight snack. We don't care about kids like you.
Well, frankly, I was a bit off the rails myself, although not as much as some.
I'm very much down this thing.
But well, you think what you like. But I tell you what I do think. I do think that it doesn't fix the bad kids, youth clubs. I mean, 1 or 2 you can reach. There are lots of ways to reach them, though, and I'm just not sure that youth clubs are the way to do it. And I'll tell you why. Because, first of all, they were taken out in 2 ways. Youth clubs were lost from the top and the bottom. They were lost from the bottom in that it became so bureaucratic. Everyone had to have all sorts of what do you call it? All sorts of checks to make sure they could work in them. A lot of the volunteers just said, "Stuff this, I'm not doing it," and off they went. And then because we'd overspent as a country while Labour were in charge, and all the money had run out, we had to start making cuts, and we couldn't cut old people's care because they would die, and we couldn't cut the NHS because people would die, and so it was what some people would say were non-essentials like youth clubs that went, and that might have been a mistake, but that is what happened. Now, if we get back onto that spending train again and just throw money at everything, which is what we've talked about so far, how will we not just end up in that situation?
He's saying productivity, increased productivity.
Well, that's all very well.
Sounds a bit keen.
That's a little. It's a little bit like that. Efficiency savings, isn't it? How are we going to make this money? What do we do with efficiency savings?
I would argue any money spent on the youth like that would be worth it. I don't think bureaucracy got rid of the youth clubs, not one bit. And I think anybody that should work with anybody else's children should be checked.
So
no child of mine will go to anyone that thinks they feel like they want to work with someone else's kids. That just creeps me out. I want you to be checked. I've never volunteered to be a dentist. Don't be a volunteer to be a youth worker. They're very skilled. The actual good youth workers are very, very skilled at doing what they should do. And I would argue that if you ask the frontline staff what they need, I mean, most of the things that maybe some people in our area get through is they need positive activities. Well, there are no positive activities because we got rid of them.
Now, I could tell you a story about youth workers that would not be fit for this channel.
No, and
I'm not going to. But let me tell you, I didn't always find what you've described.
I'm in full support of what he's saying. It annoys me that he's gone back on it.
I would much rather have spent that money, rather than trying to go back to what I think was the failed youth club model. I would rather go and spend the money on existing clubs and sports facilities and use promotion to bring more kids into those, because they're run by not by council workers, or I think it's totally the wrong way to go. They're run by real people who know the sports and love the sports. Things like for boys, there's for boys and girls, of course, it's things like boxing and football and all of those sort of things. But then things like dancing and acting and singing and drama and anything you can think of, really. Every sort of sport and activity you can think of. Skate clubs and...
yeah, I mean...
that model, mate, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know, because I know how for a lot of people with disabilities and things, they have like a personal budget. It's a shame almost they don't kind of have a personal budget for young people, in the sense that like you can spend your personal budget to go to a club.
Do you know, I really like that.
Yeah, they did do that.
I really like that, expanding the idea where kids are able to have a personal budget for clubs and things instead of organised youth clubs. They can choose the things they want to do, and rather than having to find the money, we help them find the money. And I think that's a better approach. I mean, I don't know how it would work or what it would cost, but I think that's a better approach than a one-size-fits-all youth club that I don't think works.
That model might actually work, and it doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Well, we'll have to write to Boris and tell him. Maybe.
And of course, then of course, youth clubs, where they were wanted, could start up on their own, and the kids could use their allocation on the youth club membership. And so that would actually test what is public choice, what young people want to do, rather than what we think they want to do.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea, because a lot of the barriers are, especially in our area maybe, is transport to these places and actual cost. I mean, to me, sending my child to a club and spending £5 a week doesn't, it's absolutely fine for me. Both me and my husband work very hard, so we have the money. But actually, or if you've got 2 or 3 kids, £15 a week suddenly becomes an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
And they always have to come with uniforms and everything else. That model may very well work. That's true. Any money that comes on our youth, I'm all for. And I do agree with
kids want to start judo or something, they've got to buy a suit and they've got to pay for their gradings. Oh. And if they had a personal budget, that would help. That would help them with that. I mean, I think it's quite an interesting idea.
But they'll only give it to a select. They always do. They always do the same thing. They give it to a select amount of people rather than everybody.
But that's what you said. You said you didn't want the kids who have just the satchels and the
Well, no, for
lollipops.
youth clubs. You're moaning at the 80s.
You said you only wanted the kids who are in trouble.
I do. Me personally, I'd rather hit those kids, those 10 little tearaways.
When you say hit them, you don't mean hit them.
No. Yeah, God.
So it's interesting that I thought Brexit was going to be the most hotly talked about, and it's youth clubs. That's interesting. So anyway, I'd just like to move us on. So obviously he was talking about a lot of investment. He was saying, as I've mentioned, he was going to be tough on law and order, and then he was going on about an increase in home ownership and how he wanted to, make people a nation of homeowners again. So I suppose the aim of all these plans was to increase productivity, as he says. He says, and I quote, that his ambition is to have us as a high-wage, low-tax, high-skilled, high-productivity economy with incomes rising fastest for those that are the lowest paid. He said that he wants us to be a country where, provided that you obey the laws and do no harm to others, you can live your life loving whomsoever you choose. He's quite good at using big words, Boris. He says that we are a country that's tackling climate change and we're happy to be confident about our future, and that is a vision that he wants to put to the British people. So what do you think about that? High wage, low tax, high skilled?
Well,
whomsoever you choose.
I'm sure if I'd have been standing there in the audience, I'd have been cheering and jumping, because it's all very aspirational, isn't it? And it does all sound like one of those motivational posters. The trouble is, I'm sure almost any potential leader in any party would give a variation of that speech, wouldn't they? It's about the policies that deliver it. And I do think Boris has got some great ideas and good people behind him, and he's got as much of a chance as anyone. But promising the stars is easy to do. Delivering the stars, well, you need one of them cosmonauts, don't you?
Yeah, well, he did close by saying how he's going to be delivering a sensible, moderate, one nation, but tax-cutting conservative government, sending Corbyn into orbit, Conference, let's get Brexit done and bring this country together. It was a bit of a barnstorming end. I think if I'd have been there, I'd have definitely given him a standing ovation.
It sounds very inclusive, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
was really positive until Steve spoke. I was like, oh, he's ruined my happy mood.
I thought what he was saying, if I'm honest, he was saying I'm quite a strong conservative. You know, yes, I want to be a little bit soft, so I have to say the One Nation stuff. I've got to throw a bit of the Green stuff in there. But my gist of it is, that's honestly how I took it. But you know, the gist of it is,
just throw a bit of the green stuff in.
But you know, let's be capitalists. Let's love the free market. Let's keep taxes low. That's how I read it. But I don't know about you guys. What did you make of it?
I think, well, maybe he's trying to bridge the gap between us and them all the time. It doesn't always have to be us and them. You can have different points of view but still be working towards the same goal, which is that everyone lives in a happy, healthy world, that, you know, our kids aren't killing themselves out on the streets, and suicide rates drop. All these things we all want, surely, no matter which side you're on. So I'm all feeling warm and fuzzy. I'm all for inclusiveness and Steve's looking at me like, oh, you're so young.
You know, hey, I'm a bit of a closet radical, really, and I think the problem for me is that I think we've tried for too long to sit this nebulous centre ground where you try and be something for everyone, and you use the language of both sides to be inclusive and to bring everyone together, and it sounds great, and it's delivered loads of people to Prime Ministership, and I'm sure Boris will be no different. But I'm not sure it's the right thing to do, because you can't actually be something for everyone. In the end, you believe in something and you don't believe in something else. And if you try and straddle the middle ground, sooner or later you're just going to upset everyone. A compromise, it suits neither side.
No, I get that, but I don't think he was being particular. He could have been stronger. Had he wanted to be more centrist, he could have been stronger, and he wasn't. So I do think that said a lot.
Actions speak louder than words, though, I guess, isn't it? And at the minute, he's doing what he said he's going to do. So he's still working towards. I mean, the thing is, no matter what happens, until Brexit's done and dusted, the rest isn't going to get done, is it? You can't make the big changes until we're actually out and we're done.
Well, it's been a bit of a shock to me over the last few years to see Conservatives pushing illiberal policies that control the choices that we can freely make. And things like the sugar tax drove me to distraction. And I was really hoping that we'd seen the end of that nonsense. And it sort of sounds like maybe we got a bit more of it to put up with, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, well, you know, I think I came into this with warm, fuzzy feelings like Susan, and now my soul's been slightly destroyed by it.
Yeah.
Look,
I think we should do all that.
All right, so let me just qualify. I like Boris. I think he's going to be a good Prime Minister. I'm broadly supportive, but we can't sit on this podcast and all agree with one another. We've got to challenge some of the things we think.
I'm okay with you if you all agree with me. I'm okay to be agreed with.
I think the thing was, the message in the background throughout the whole conference, it did say in the back, get Brexit delivered. It was on every board in the conference. Yeah. Everyone had stickers in there. That was very clearly the message. Boris assured us all again a number of times in the speech that it would happen by the end of October, come what may. So I suppose the $1 million question is, do we believe him? I think he can. I think Boris can get it done. Steve, what do you think?
When you've made this much of a deal about it, if you then screw up, you're going to have a hell of a price to pay. So he wants to. He wants to get it done by the 31st. And I suspect he's willing to go. I reckon he's willing to be arrested. Yeah. I think he's willing to say, come arrest me, I'm the Prime Minister.
Well, he is trying to do this kind of the people versus Parliament. I mean, they could just look at his social media. He started a Snapchat account today. He's doing loads of live streaming of videos. He's really embracing.
The country's on his side, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, look at the polls. We are miles ahead of the opposition. Labour's fallen to third today. The Lib Dems are so far behind us, it's a joke. I mean, it's not because everyone's suddenly become a Conservative. It's because people like what Boris is saying, particularly about Brexit.
What do you think, Susan? Do you believe him? Can he do it?
Yeah, I do believe him, actually. I also think he kind of represents the old school bloody-minded British person, doesn't he? Where they've sat there and they're quite proud of who they are, and they're bored of being told that they shouldn't be proud, and they're willing to fight for everyone else's rights as well as their own. And I think people actually can relate to that quite a lot.
I'll vote for you on that message.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place. That's a good place to leave us for the evening. So thank you ever so much, everyone. We've been on Unapologetic, UK's politics, news, and stuff from a writer-centred viewpoint. It's good night from me.
Good night from me.
Good night from me.
Bye.